what you'll do for the next exercise, you can stay seated for now, but you'll stand up. And you're going to take your treat pouch off, or if you just have treats in your pocket, treats are going to go on the chair. So, what we are working on with this is some dogs, when the treat pouch is on our body, and we say yes and we go to reward them, we go to reach for the treat and the dog crowds our treat pouch to try to get to the reward faster. It's not the end of the world. It's a little bit rude, or I like to tell dogs that that's rude. So we are going to teach them some patience, and we are also going to help them understand with this that the treat is not always on my body. Sometimes it's somewhere else. So at home, you could do this with having treats up on the mantle, somewhere high enough that the dog can't get to the food. When you work on this here, what I suggest for your setup is to have a pretty good grip on the dog's leash when you put the treats down so that they don't shark the treats and get to them before you're ready. When you practice this at home, you want to make sure that your setup is such that you are between the dog and the food, so that I'm going to ask my dog to do something here. I ask them to sit. I'm going to call out the behaviors right now in class. So I say, tell your dog to sit. You ask the dog to sit, and then you go reach for the food, and you reward your dog back in the spot that you asked them to do the behavior. Over time, when you're working on this at home, you can spread out more and more away from where the treats are, so that I ask my dog to sit. What a good dog. I go over here, I get the reward, and I'm expecting my dog to stay in the spot that I asked them to perform the behavior. So this is helping them to start understand that I don't always have treats on my person. Sometimes they're somewhere else. So do what I just asked you to do, and you still will get a reward even if I have to go somewhere else to get it. If you're practicing this at home, be very mindful of where you practice it, because let's say I'm using the coffee table. If I leave my treats on the coffee table, I want to be between the dog and the treats. Otherwise, if my dog tries to make a dash for the food and they get it before I can stop them, I just taught them to eat treats off my coffee table or jump up on the counter to get the treats. So let's say that this is my coffee table. I want to work with the dog here so that I have to do this to get the food and then come back to them. Whereas, and as the dog gets better and better at this, then there's less likely of a chance that they'll make a dash for the food. But if I were to start this exercise and my dog is here and my treat is there, if I ask them to sit and say, good dog, they could just turn around and reward themselves, and I don't want them to do that. So you want to be between them and the food, or at the very least, treats are on your side and the dog is like here kind of in front of you. So I'm going to call out the exercises, and then you will ask the dog to do them. There might be a bit of a pause while I give everybody a chance to get it at least once. So when I call out, ask your dog to sit. If your dog does it right away, say yes. Grab the treat to reward them. Come back and reward them. If I haven't called out the next exercise yet, you can just continue to reward them for staying in the position, or you can release them, change your position slightly, and then do the same behavior again. If the dog moves when you go to reach for the reward, come back, ask them to go in the position again, and then go to get the treat. And you may need to repeat that a couple times for the dog to understand that you have to stay still in order to get the food. It's also helpful to start closer to your treats so that you don't have to move as much, and that the dog gets the picture of, I have to stay put in order to get the food. So to start, you may want to be this close, and then as we go through, you can kind of start to shift away. Starting all the way out here isn't really fair to the dog, because they're probably not going to get the picture right away. Was that your question, Jennifer?
No, my question was, you don't want us to use stay or wait.
I would not, preferably not. If you want to use that to start, just so the dog gets the picture, you can. But the idea with this is to not have to use those cues.
Okay.
You can if the dog really doesn't seem to be understanding what's happening here. And that's okay. So, go ahead and stand up and put your treats on a surface near you. I will call out the first behavior in just a second when I see that everybody's ready. You may need to anchor the leash with your foot so that the dog doesn't come right for the treats. So first thing, ask your dog to sit. When they sit, tell them yes, reach for that treat, and then come back to reward them. If they move when you go to get the treat, just reset and try again. Look at all these puppies doing sit. And we're holding it. Got some strong core muscles in here. Ask them to down. You can use hand gestures. This doesn't need to be verbal only. Whatever it looks like when you ask the dog to down. And again, if the dog does it right away, you can continue to reward them, or you can release them and then ask them to do it again in a slightly different spot. Good dog. Okay, starting from a down position, ask the dog to sit. This one might need a hand lure to help them move up from a down into a sit. This is harder to do. Alright, everybody's doing well with this, so take one step away from your treat source in any direction. Okay, ask the dog to down.
Jewel has the cutest down in the room.
Okay, give your dog a breather, release them. Don't let them get the treats on your chair, but just give them a breather for a second. So a reminder again, whenever you're working with your dog, in public, in class, wherever it is at home, break up your training sessions by giving them a breather. What I like to do with my dog is I will release him and I give him a couple seconds to see if he wants to go into a different part of the room that we're in to sniff something, if he needs to scratch. If he just looks at me expectantly like, what are we doing? Then I'll keep going with it. But I like to give him a chance where I end the session and then give him a chance to do something else, so that if he doesn't want to engage with me anymore, we'll go and he will go sniff something else. Most of the time he wants to keep doing things, but I also don't want to train him for like 4 hours on end, because that is a lot. So do short sessions, end them while things are going well, and throw in lots of breaks in between, so that puppy ends on a good note, they want to come back to you, and you end on a good note, you feel better about things, you want to come back to it later. If you are working the dog to the point where they lose interest in you and they don't want to work with you anymore, that is not going to bode well for the next session. And if you do that repetitively, they're going to lose interest in working with you entirely. So it's better to end while things are going well. That doesn't mean you won't have sessions where you realize, shoot, I should have stopped 5 minutes ago. That is going to happen, but your aim is to not have that happen every time. So you want to stop while things are still going in your favor. Okay, we are going to keep doing this exercise, so you can start close to your chair. You can start a little bit farther away if you'd like. So your dog can be in any position, doesn't matter what, sit, stand, or down. I want you to take, you are going to tell them to wait and take 3 steps away from them, and then call them to you with come. So whatever position, sit down or stand, ask them to wait. You take 3 steps away from them, and then call them to you. And then the position that you called them to, that's where you're going to reward them. You'll step back to your chair, you'll get the treats, and then you'll come back to them and reward them. I don't think Ferris knew what he was doing there.
What?
He's like, really?
He looked a little confused.
Oh, good. Wait. Come. Yes.
There you go.
Come
He
on.
understood at that time.
Good boy. It's the mask.
It is the mask. It is interesting to see how dogs get confused. It's funny, when we first started wearing masks, I noticed that with dogs that apparently they had been depending a lot on my face for commands, because when they couldn't see my face, they wouldn't do the commands immediately, because my facial expression is apparently important. Okay. Ask your dog to sit. If they're in a down position already, you might need to pull them up into a lure. Go back and reward them. Ask your dog to down. Good puppies. Okay, let your dogs have a breather. We're going to switch exercises. So, with this, we just did pretty basic sit down, we threw a weight and a come in there. When you're at home, you can do this sort of thing with whatever exercises it is that you're working on. So, you could practice with an under. Don't have them do under on the same surface where the treats are, just in case. But let's say my treats are over here. This is my fireplace or whatever, and I want my dog to do an under. My dog does under. Great, what a good dog. I walk over here, I get my treats, I come back, I reward my dog for doing under. So you can do this with whatever behaviors you're working on at home, but I don't want to get too complicated here in class. It might be the first time that you're doing something like this, and we want to make it easy for the pups to start out so that they understand the concept of, I'm going to ask you to do something here, I'm going to go get the treat, and I will come back to you with the reward. You don't have to follow me in order to get your reward. Any questions on that? Okay. Julie, if you want to end it, and then